So Expedition 33 is breaking more and more records as time goes on. This game is absolutely blowing away its competition. And the funniest thing is that I got so many comments during my first video when I talked about Expedition 33 because people can't just be happy about a game succeeding, that they had to bring up the fact that Japanese RPGs blow this game out the water, right? These AAA, by the way, Japanese RPGs that are funded by mega corporations are apparently blowing this single, I guess even damn near indie video game. Apparently that's a comparison, but regardless, we actually have some information proving that in fact, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is selling twice as fast as pretty much any other recent Japanese RPG has on Steam, and it's got people wondering what is going on. And not only that, this article was written before this announcement, where apparently Expedition 33 has officially surpassed 2 million copies sold. So let's get into this article, guys, from PC Gamer. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a big advocate and a big fan of Japanese RPGs. This is not Expedition 33 destroys Japanese RPGs because all JRPGs suck. That's not that kind of a video. I love JRPGs. I more so love some of the older ones than some of the newer ones for obvious reasons. They have decided to abandon all things that made pretty much Japanese RPGs, JRPGs in the first place. And I'm mainly talking about Square Enix, obviously, when I'm talking about this whole situation. But still, overall, I'm a big fan of JRPGs, and there is no hate towards them whatsoever. I love them, and I hope they continue to make them. Just bring them back to what they used to be, like Metaphor Refantasio, for example, would utilize combat that is more typical of what you would expect for a JRPG. But with all that being said, Expedition 33 proves yet again that all it takes is a game being made by gamers for gamers. It's a video game that's made by a non-mega corporation. It's a video game made by a small development team. 33 people got together to make this game over a few years, and not only is their budget small, but their budget does not reflect their overall scope and ideas when it comes to this particular video game. With all that being said, here we are. We got Expedition 33 absolutely destroying it on Steam. And keep in mind, guys, Expedition 33 is, in fact, a Game Pass game, which a lot of people would try to use as an excuse for why other games failed, right? They would try to say, well, look at South of Midnight. That game's failing because it's on Game Pass, and everybody wants to play it on Game Pass, and that's what people do with Game Pass games. And yet there are so many games that have released on Game Pass that have been purchased en masse by people, right? Starfield was one of them, right? Stalker 2 was another one. This video game is one of them. Doom the Dark Ages will be another one. Oblivion Remastered will be another one. If people want to take the video game home and actually spend the money and purchase it, then they will. Game Pass is not going to stop them from doing that. So then it says Clair Obscur Expedition 33 might be a front runner for Game of the Year personal pick in 2025. Its hooks are well and truly in the skin, ticking all the right boxes for the inner RPG and Psycho freaks. A banger soundtrack, gripping story, and all-around good first showing from Sandfall Interactive has seen its first major success despite living in Oblivion Remastered shadow. I gotta be honest with you. Even though I understand that Oblivion Remastered sold like hotcakes, I don't think this game was in its shadow after all. I think this game stood right next to Oblivion, and they both created their own shadows on the entire gaming industry. I genuinely believe that. I think Expedition 33 and Oblivion Remastered stood tall amongst an industry that is currently trying to screw over gamers with $80 to $90 retail video games, and here they are at $50 or whatever price they are, and they're looking down on the competition and laughing at them because they clearly give gamers what they want for a price that they are wanting to pay. It says, in fact, it's apparently outselling Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Metaphor Refantasio, Persona, and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, as well as a whopping 2.1 ratio. That's per analyst Reese Elliott, who recently spoke to GamesIndustry.biz. Here's a handy graph shared by the site to put it all into perspective. Now, this entire graph I saw, and when I saw this graph, I couldn't help but laugh. Because here's the thing. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I never liked what they did with the story in the first original remake. I've been very vocal about that. I'm not saying that that makes it a bad game. I just don't like the direction that they decided to take the story. And in terms of the overall gameplay, the gameplay's pretty decent. The combat's pretty decent. They stay true to the materia system for the most part, and they give you relatively what you're looking for in terms of a Final Fantasy overall experience, in terms of Final Fantasy VII. But in terms of the actual story, I feel like it falls flat on its face. And the introduction of the Whispers was enough for me to realize that this is not going to be what most people thought, which is why Final Fantasy VII Remake sold twice as much as Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because a lot of the purists out there that are Final Fantasy VII fans, once they realized they got bait and switched, and they absolutely got bait and switched. I don't care what anyone says about the Final Fantasy VII Remake. People bought that game thinking they were going to get a similar story, if not the exact same story, with modern graphics and modern combat, and they did not get that. They got the modern graphics, they got the modern combat, they didn't get the same story. They got the rug pulled out from under them, and they ended up getting this multiversal bullshit story that is inherent, Kingdom Hearts like. So people checked out when it came to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is why it didn't sell nowhere near as much as the first one. Now, with all that being said, Metaphor ReFantazio is also another amazing game, and that particular game, a lot of people on the certain left side tried to co-opt that video game as a hardcore, all about politics, that's all it is, that's all it'll ever be kind of a video game. The game was good, man, and that's ultimately what it is, and the story with its in-game politics was not enough to sway people from not playing the game. But you can clearly see that Expedition 33 is destroying these video games. It's almost at 800,000. It's not even close. The games are clearly not even close in terms of sales when it first came out. According to Alinea Analytics data, and you got to keep all of this with a grain of salt because they're not very open with their numbers, in the sense that it's kind of like Circana, whatever the other company that they like to use. But in any case, the game has sold more than 785,000 copies on Steam in its first week alone, more than twice the sales of any recent comparable games in the Japanese RPG style, including last year's acclaimed Atlas title, Metaphor ReFantazio. It should be noted that analytics companies like these tend to play the exact methodology behind their numbers somewhat close to the chest. This is all educated guesswork rather than an official source with a concrete grip on actual sales. Well, that's how it goes with pretty much all these, companies. It's unfortunate because they're so busy advertising their video games with players engaged and are trying to use that as a metric to be very vague to make themselves look like a success in the public eye when they're really not. So it's unfortunate, but thankfully, again, Clair Expedition 33 is not exactly a company that's doing that. They're out here, Sandfall Interactive is out here actually giving you real, tangible numbers instead of, oh yeah, we're at 4 million players engaged. Like, no, bro, they're at 2 million copies sold, and they even tell you that includes copies that are shipped to retailers. So they're even that level of transparent when they don't have to be. But they have 2 million copies sold in general, and they're only going up from there instead of players engaged. But in any case, though, given Clair Obscur Expedition 33 bumped up its all-time peak to 145,000 on SteamDB last weekend, we can at least assume that it's done pretty well compared to the competition. The report also keenly points out, of these competitors, only one of them, which was Persona 3 Reload, had a simultaneous Game Pass launch on PC, which is even more impressive. You don't have to pay to play full price for Clair Obscur at the moment, but PC gamers very much want to, and that's the difference, right? When you introduce a video game that is actually good, that is actually fun, that is actually respecting people's time, you are going to be rewarded with their money. And then on top of that, not only did you give them a damn near AAA experience, but you're giving it to them at what would be considered a AA price now. You're giving it to them at $50. If anything, they're giving it to you at $45 because they put the game on sale for $5 off on Steam. I couldn't believe that this game was $45, and the amount of content that you get from it is ridiculous, which is why the game is doing so well, which is why the word of mouth is so good. People realize, wow, this is a great game, and not only that, it's doing the exact opposite of what everybody else in the industry is doing. People are currently trying to screw you for $90 to play an 8-year-old game with all this DLC, and here you have a brand new game that's giving you 30 to 60 hours of gameplay, depending on how you want to play it, maybe even more than that, and they're only charging you $45 for it. It's absolutely insane, bro. So anyway, this report also keenly points out that, again, the competitors are not on Game Pass except for one, and it's not because Old 33 doesn't deserve the praise, but because Metaphor ReFantazio was also a game that obsessed this particular journalist for 80 plus hours, and Rebirth wasn't an industry slacker either. I mean, it was pretty much, in comparison, it was. So people are trying to figure out what is it that is making this game do so well. Now, before I read this, basically for me, what's doing this game for a lot of people, in my opinion, is number one, the story is fantastic. The pacing of this story is insane. It knows how to hook you from the beginning, and it never lets go. In every single act, it will hook you and continue to hook you over and over and over again until eventually you realize, wow, we're at the end. That's unfortunate. I don't want to be at the end, right? You end up hitting that kind of experience. So the story hooks you from beginning to end, which is not something that a lot of video games do these days. Not only that, in terms of the gameplay is more, I would say, action oriented than a lot of turn-based combat games. So what's happening is that people that otherwise would never check out a video game like this are now checking this game out because they hear about the parry mechanics. They hear about the dodge mechanics. They hear about how skill-based the combat actually is instead of just being a regular turn-based combat system. So it's introducing this to a lot of new players that otherwise would have never tried it, and they find out that they liked it, and then before you know it, word of mouth spreads and it continues to spread, and that's where you end up here. Not only that, you also have the fact that the actual game is cheap, right? Like in terms of the price and the entry of the game, it is so much cheaper than most modern video games are, especially for the level of quality that you're getting in this game. So all those three issues combined, I think, is what is allowing so many people to try this game, and the word of mouth will spread as more people continue to try the game. So anyway, this journalist says it's excellence from an unexpected place. I was cautiously optimistic about Expedition 33 from the trailers, but its Sandfall Interactive debut. People like fresh experiences, underdog stories, and supporting small studios. Quite frankly, so do I. I feel like this has a little bit to do with it, but it's really not in the grand scheme of it, to be honest with you. I don't think really the studio being new has too much to do with it. I think people do like new experiences. Yes, I think absolutely, especially in a world where all we're getting is remasters and remakes half the time. I think people absolutely will latch onto something that's new, especially if it's good. But in terms of a new studio, yeah, they don't really care about that too much. They care about that after the fact. They care about that after they try the game. If the game is good and they got hooked by the game, then they care about the studio. Then they care about the studio story. Then they find out the studio is an underdog studio. Now they care, right? But they don't really care about that beforehand. Then the opening hours are gripping and double-pronged, again, about the whole story being addicting. The parry-based mechanics are piquing the curiosity of people who wouldn't usually go for turn-based games, and PC gamers like the French 30-year-olds more than they do anime teens. I don't think that's true, but overall, I mean, whatever, that's funny. So ultimately, at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, Expedition 33 is absolutely destroying the competition. They are at 2 million copies sold, and of course, I had to leave a little bit of a joke here on their post saying, okay, but seriously, everyone really wants to know how many players are engaged, please. That's the important metric for us to determine success. Appreciate you guys. Most people caught the joke, but a lot of people, you know, were also like, are you being serious right now? And I'm like, dude, it's sarcasm. Like, you really can't sense the sarcasm. These are ex-Ubisoft devs, which makes it even more ironic. They are talking about 2 million copies sold versus 3 or 4 million players engaged. I think it's hilarious, by the way. But this is how you do it, ladies and gentlemen. This is how you do it. And I have no problem rewarding developers, whether they're ex-Ubisoft developers or not. I don't care. It's very clear that they left their job before because they said they were bored of Ubisoft, and now they're here providing one of the best gaming experiences that we've seen in the last couple of years. And I will absolutely celebrate that every single day. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you did enjoy it. If you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.